Hello, everyone. It's Larry Johnson, your host for A Principles Voices. And I have a delightful guest today, Joe Shaliro. He's the no, not PR, donor relations manager for the Cleveland Gospel Mission. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me, Larry.
Now, you know, I love to meet new people. And this young man and I just sort of, he sat down. I can't remember who was first, but we sat next to each other at a corporate conference in the bar at the hotel and just struck up a conversation. I do that all the time. For those people who know me, kind of embarrasses my wife sometime when she's with me. He never matter. He just talking to everybody. Well, it's just that's the way you get to know people. And I got to know this young man. And when he told me that he was the donor relations guy, I'm going, you are not type to look here because you look like you're from the fitness background. But I looked on LinkedIn and guess what? He has a history as a fitness guru. So you've been in this job about a year, Joe. I presume you're enjoying it. So your whole history past this was
Yeah.
was physical culture of one kind or the other. That's a pretty big leap to make. You want to talk about that just a little bit? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, it was great meeting you. That's always the best part of conferences is the people you just run into and start talking
Mm-hmm.
to. So I have, like most fundraisers, I feel like when people ask what my degree is, I'm like, don't have a degree in fundraising. I don't think there's that many of them out there, but my master's degree is actually in exercise physiology. And so I had actually started my career as an emergency medical technician here in Cleveland. It's actually a lot of where kind of my passion for working with the more impoverished communities in urban Cleveland came from, because that was so much of who I was working with in that
Yeah.
job. And then I went into my education for health and fitness because that was something I was interested in. I ended up doing a grad assistantship in administration for campus recreation where I went to school. And then I really enjoyed the administrative part of overseeing student staff and programs and planning things for college environments. And so my first couple jobs were I was the fitness and wellness director for campus rec at Ohio University and then
Mm-hmm.
at the University of Cincinnati, so two places in Southern Ohio. And a lot of the work that I did there, it's interesting because when you talk about how I came from there to here, some of the things that I gradually started enjoying more and more at the schools was the work outside of specifically exercise and fitness that I was doing and more of the holistic wellness stuff. And so I was on a lot of different committees I was on an eating disorder task force. I was on some committees for helping with students who were at risk for dropping out. Just different things that were more centered around things outside of just, it included health and fitness, but not just that. And then when I decided to move back up here to Cleveland in 2020, I took a job as a senior director of wellness and community engagement at the Mandel Jewish Community Center here in Cleveland. So, for those who may not be aware, Cleveland has one of the largest Jewish populations in the country and actually the world outside of Israel per capita. So it's a big community here. We have a big center. And so I took on that job and it just kind of further expanded my nonprofit work. And as I was working in that job, I worked there about 4.5 years. I learned a lot in that job. But one of the things that during that time, I had started volunteering at the city mission, which is the name of our gospel mission here. And I had been familiar since I was a kid because I grew up in the area, started volunteering. I joined their associate board, and I just felt like, and I'm not somebody who says this a lot, but I had felt just this pull like God was like, you're going to work here. I don't know what it's going to look like, but you're going to work here because it just resonated with everything that
Mm-hmm.
I feel like God's put on my heart. And so, ended up having this position, donor relations, open up. And all my jobs to this point had been very programmatic and operational. So most of my positions, I oversaw over 100 staff, multiple facilities. So it was more on that side of things. a lot of budget oversight. And I worked with development, but hadn't worked in development specifically. I knew what drove me crazy about development people, which actually I think has helped me in my job now.
You want to
And
share that with us? You want to share that with us? What did drive you crazy about development people?
yeah, so in looking at it from, I think, and from an operations standpoint, and I guess I could, share it a little more kindly than that, but I think the
Oh no, I
thing that
think
always
I
where
get
the
driven crazy with development people too. So go ahead, be honest, be candid with me, please. You can say
yeah,
anything you want here.
yeah. So I think that what's really hard is when you're working in the day-to-day operations of somewhere and you have staff oversight, facility oversight, the amount of fires and day-to-day things that are, I mean, there's hours at a time. You're not even at your computer checking your email because you're running around addressing things and taking care of the service that's occurring. And I think a lot of times when development, because on the development side, which I work in now, we're trying to get the whole organization to buy into this culture of philanthropy, to buy into what is the importance, especially for an organization like ours. We solely rely on private fund foundation funding. We don't take any government funding. And so it's very important for us to continue to do what we do. But I think a lot of times development, the team, they have a meeting or they sit down or they join a staff meeting with the staff and they just go, here's why this is so important. You need to do fundraising in addition to your current job. And everybody sits there and goes, I'm already burnt out and fried. You have no idea what my job, the depth of what my job entails. And I think it's a connection that is a struggle when people don't feel like they get empathy from the development side. And then the other piece of it too, I think, um, is also just like an understanding of what all the different specific operations are. One of the things that's really important to me in my role now is I spend a lot of time in our facilities. We have two crisis centers, a women and children's crisis center where I'm at right now, and then a men's crisis center. And I spend a lot of time in the facilities and I spend a lot of time volunteering in the different areas. I'll cover the front desk, I'll work in childcare. And I think that's another area that sometimes, and you can't spend all your time doing it, but if you're in development and then you're walking through and the only time people see you is when you're giving a tour to a big donor, and then a staff member hears you explaining, here's what this is and what this is, and they're like, they have no idea what they're talking about. And I don't even know that person's name. And so, without rambling too much, I think there's a big disconnect that I think happens. And I don't think that it's necessarily something where you're ever going to be fully connected. I've said to my team a few times, I actually think in my mind, and I could be wrong, but I think we have to have an expectation that it's more important. We have to know a bigger percentage of what programs and operations about their jobs than they need to know about our jobs. And you could say, well, that's not fair, but we have a behind the scenes job that's different. And so we have to kind of pick our 20% that is really important for them to understand about fundraising development and lean into that versus go, get caught up in our pride being like, you have no idea what all goes into my job. It's like they don't have time to worry about what goes into our job. So
I
that's
get
my
it.
little
I
that's
get
my
it.
little spiel where I think it's helped me because I'm able to take the perspective of being on the other side coming into fundraising and try to take those things. So
Well, um, what we do at the A Principles is to instill that ethos into all the employees, knowing that fundraising is not really their job, but it's something. It is and it isn't. I mean, they don't have a fundraising assignment, but when they understand the ethos of it and how it impacts the organization, you become an organization that attracts funding, not seeking funding. You attract it because of when you interact with someone, they instinctively know how to respond to you. I'll give you an example. True story. Happened last year around August. Montana, 5,000 person town. Well, when you're in a town of 5,000, you're kind of a known person and they know who you are. Well, this gentleman is a what they call an ultra high net worth individual, meaning he has at least $1 billion. He's known. All right. He's there.
Yeah.
And this was in August, and he made a phone call to a local organization that he had interest in, and he wanted to talk to the CEO and kind of figure out what was going on there. And then he um, he makes a phone call, and the receptionist answers, and he identifies himself by name, and he says, "I'm Mr. Smith. I'd like to speak to Julie, whatever her name was, the CEO." Well, the receptionist did what she was trained to do. All right. Oh, hi, Mr. Smith. It's a pleasure to say hello to you. Julie's really deep in planning our fall gala right now. Why doesn't she call you back a little bit later in the year? Okay, that's not the response. All right. But
Yeah.
she was doing what she was asked to do. Instead,
Right.
if she'd had an awareness of how they fit into the big picture, oh, Mr. Smith, it's a pleasure. Julie's in a staff meeting this morning, but I'll make sure she returns your call this afternoon. What number should I use? You see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was reported to me by the principal himself, by the way. I know how the conversation went. So this is the sort of thing that we do. We have it's a training platform that they manage, and they help their people understand, and therefore they understand more of what philanthropy is, and so the fundraising staff isn't beating on them all the time and this kind of thing, but the fundraising staff has to understand their piece of the pie too. So that's the reason I want to
Yeah.
talk about donor relations. I hope you're not going to give me the answer that somebody gave me about 5-10 years ago when I asked. I was at a luncheon and there was a lady there who did donor relations for a local nonprofit, and she just got the job. And I said,
Yeah.
"So, Sally, that's not her name. How do you like your job?" And then she said, "I said, well, so, how do you like how did I put it to her? Uh, how do you like meeting the donors?" "I don't have any donor contact." "What do you mean?" Well, her job was really essentially keeping up with the CRM. All right. It wasn't donor related. So you're not going to tell me that, are you?
No,
Okay,
no.
good, good, good. I didn't think so. So tell me a little bit about the donor relations aspect of what you're doing. How do you interface with them?
Yeah, so I'm a major gift officer, so I have a portfolio of about 150 major donors.
So you're also
Major,
doing direct fundraising. You're not just donor
yeah,
relations. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. And so I have of that group for us of our, it's different per organization. For us, major donors is anything over $5,000 in a fiscal year. And so in that range. We have a couple different major gift officers, our CEO and uh, our a few, like our CEO has a small portfolio of some close people that
Mm-hmm.
she is connected to as well. And so every month and throughout the year, to your point, I have communication and touch points that I do with those donors and keep a lot of notes and stuff and on their interests and their preferences on what I've gotten to know about them. And I think this is the first time I've worked for a Christian organization as well. And it's been really cool to be able to talk to somebody on the phone and go, hey, can I pray with you? Can I pray for you about anything? And really just building relationships. And as you know, and as it looks like as much the focus of your all's philosophy is the majority of the work is building the healthy relationships and helping, their donors are giving us a financial gift, but we have a responsibility not just to go, oh, to keep getting more money, give them information, but we have an opportunity to share with them things and help them get things other than just a thank you out of the gift that they give. And so particularly whether it's because it's giving them a window or education into the work we do or the struggles that people are dealing with, if it's inviting them in for a graduation or for an event and getting a chance to see the impact of what they did. And then for we have many different donors. We have secular donors, we have Christian donors, we have Jewish donors, we have donors from all over the map. And particularly for some of our donors where they have, whether it's they're Christian or Jewish, or they have a part of their belief and is in serving through this, we also have the opportunity to help them, to help connect them with that. I always talk when I talk to churches, because we all kind of wear a lot of hats here. So some of the work that I do is also I'll go speak. We have a speakers bureau where I'll go speak to churches, businesses, and a lot of what I talk to the churches about too is, hey, this is part of the gospel is not just sitting in church on Sundays. This is figuring out what it looks like outside of that, and whether it's volunteering your time or money. And so, anyways, without getting down too many different paths, it's primarily that portfolio is looking at the total relationships. And then in addition to that, part of the benefit of so many of my past jobs being so overworked and overwhelmed is that I have pretty good bandwidth now. So I try to just help with wherever I can. And so I connect groups from my church for volunteering and things like that. And quite honestly, it's a fine line, as you know. The majority of my efforts have to be in a set of things for my donor portfolio. But being a little involved in a reasonable way in volunteering and these other things and speaking with different groups, it makes me a better donor relations officer and a better fundraiser. And I
Oh,
think I know
yeah.
for certain some of the largest gifts that I've been able to work with somebody on giving to support us, I've only been able to speak to those things and have the relationship with them because I've have the relationships I have here. And even as I'm walking through the building, be able to introduce them to people or have our residents and their kids smile and go, "Hey, Mr. Joe," those are things that are
Mhm.
they're part of, even though not directly, they're still part of the greater relationship with the donors. So
Well, that's you're integrating these people into the life of the organization,
yeah,
and then that's the best part of what you do. It's not a transaction. It's integrating them into the life of the organization at any number of different levels. And for you to be able to do that effectively, you have to know the organization and the players and what they do. Um,
yeah.
that's key. This is interesting. I started out this interview thinking that you were more in a stewardship role, which you're not. You are more in a direct acquisition role of building that portfolio, uh, using taking a donor, growing their relationship, bringing them closer to the organization over time. So, yeah. So, is there a reason why you're called a donor relations officer? Because I've seen your card and not a major gift officer. I'm sure that was deliberate.
Yeah, so we've used that terminology because we've kind of taken the approach of not in the job titles having gift or some of that terminology in it. Internally, that's what we kind of like internal and external. Internally, I'm a major gift officer. I also oversee our team for our donor relations team, so including our mid-level and our major donors. So kind
Oh,
of doing a
okay.
mix of the stewardship and the individual fundraising. But part of that is intentional on our side, and everyone has a different philosophy. But I think we find that many people, when they see major gift officer in an email signature, they're going to go, "Oh, great, Joe's gonna ask me for money." And I think and not everybody thinks that, but we intentionally chose that terminology because we look at it as my job is, even though it is raising major gifts, it's really the relationships with the donors, and it's helping the rest of our team better strategize and approach relationships with the donors. So, even though it can be confusing for as we look at different organizations and what they call everything, I've liked it because I think it helps people see it's like my primary goal is like you said, integrating you with the organization, connecting you, and then that like you said earlier, when you're doing that right, people that have the ability to give, it ends up happening because
Hmm.
you have to be intentional, but it's doing those pieces right. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about this too, but I've worked plenty of places where we've had somebody come in basically ready to go, "I want to give you $1 million, X amount of money. What would you do with it?" And it's fumbled so poorly because in that meeting, we just go, oh, well, yeah, basically, it's too many organizations, I think, just go, we'll find some way to do it. Or like one of the things you and I had been talking about earlier in a conversation separate from this was people just give a laundry list of here's things we need. What do we need more of? What's a line item
Mhm.
that I can give this person? And instead being able to connect people to both the mission that we do and then one of the things that we've been doing that's been one of the projects I've been working on is these donor impact portfolios where we work on really being able to lay out and I actually use this and we could talk about this more in connection with my donors of I use it in my thank yous, I use it in gift asks of here's a tangible example of how many, depending on their interests, men, women, children, meals, days of shelter, program costs. Here's what the number of people can be served in a time frame of time with the gift you're giving us. So
Mhm.
that way they're not just going, is this just disappearing into a chasm somewhere. And as you know, and as anyone that works in fundraising, one of the most important things we can do all the time is get people to donate to general operating and undesignated funds versus designating it to something specific. Obviously, there's exceptions, but it gives us more flexibility. And I've found that actually, the more we can articulate clearly the way we steward their gifts, the more comfortable they are just going, you know what? I've had people that start off going, I want this to go to
Yeah.
this specific group. And then as I've worked through that conversation, they go, you know what? I trust you and do what is going to be best with this. And so, um,
Let's
yeah,
look
so
at that
there's a
word.
lot of pieces to
Let's look at that word trust, something that has really declined in the last few years. The public is distrustful of their government, distrustful of the health regulatory agency. All these things, most of it a direct result of the pandemic. They felt they were lied to. In some cases, they were. So that, but you're looking at building that trust because it's all about the trust, which means once you've built it, you have to maintain it. And all it takes
it.
is one false step for it to break. One thing that I've done, and you're free to use this if you want to, you get someone that comes to you and they don't really know what they want, but they want to make a gift. Um, I've often said, so, Joe, what would you like to accomplish? I mean, step
Yeah.
back.
Right.
What would you like to accomplish? And just a very open ended kind of question. And then they may say something, and you engage them and kind of begin to develop these ideas that they come up with and how I'd like to do this or I'd like to do that. And of course, depending on the ability of the person, there may be a great deal of expansiveness there. It just depends. And
Right.
the really clever, the really expert fundraiser is one that really marries the visions of the donor with the needs of the organization. They can do that marrying. And so, and it's been my experience that the actual dollar amount, if we can talk about that, of any investment tends to be a lot more than would have been achieved if they just do a straight gift for X program. You see,
Absolutely.
because it's not about the money, as you already indicated. It's really not about the money. It's about the other. Well, you sound like you're really enjoying this. Um,
Yeah, I love it. And I love it. I don't think, and I think this is probably the case for a lot of people. I would not like fundraising for an organization or a cause that I didn't believe as strongly in as I do this one. And I don't think I'd be a good fundraiser at it either. And
mm,
so the reason I love it is because I just feel like it sounds like it could be hyperbole, but I just feel like the work we do in helping people in poverty is like, I just feel like it's why God put me on this earth. So that makes me love this job.
okay, all right. Um, so tell me a little bit. How many you're a line manager? You have others that report to you?
Yeah, so we have our donor relations team. We have a mid-level gift officer. We have another major gift officer. And then we also include in that team also our CEO or chief development officer for that whole team, but I lead those meetings and I guide the mid-level officer and the other major gift officer and what we do strategically with those connections for those portfolios. And then because we only have one mid-level officer, and obviously the size of that portfolio can only get so big. It's bigger than major gifts. It's mid 700s for him.
Mm-hmm.
And then we use some external services and some other strategies for people on the lower end to help move them through the pipeline of engaging them and connecting them to us. And we all do thank yous even outside of our portfolios for gifts that come in certain ranges. So we have always working on the method to the madness to make sure everybody is cared for and stewarded well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have a I don't know if you know it off the top of your head, do you have a pretty high renewal rate for your donors?
Yeah, our retention is over 60% for our donors year over
That's
year.
good. That's good.
It's yeah, it's we've that's been one of the things we've outpaced a lot of because we've done a lot of looking at benchmarking the past year because especially as we work with most places are working on addressing donor acquisition declines of those rates. And so we've been doing a lot of data analysis. That was one of the projects I was leading was every quarter we use a entrepreneurial operating system. So every quarter we have a rock we work on and donor acquisition strategy was one of them. So we looked at every stat we have. And so a lot of this stuff is comparable with other rescue missions and nonprofits, but retention is actually, we've outpaced a lot of other places. And so one of the things as we've talked about donor acquisition is also, I firmly believe in not, or you need to continue to pour gas on the thing that's working and not just divert it all to the things that aren't working. I've been a part of organizations where I think we've chased something and then you end up not investing in the things that are working. And so our donor stewardship and our retention and our overall budget has increased every year for the past 7 years. And so even with the decline in total file size, and so there's a lot of good things working really well, even as we work to address the things that we need to work on. So, um,
Well,
yeah,
principle seven of the eight principles is um, oh good. And I developed them. Hold on. Principle seven, renew and refresh. Okay. You first renew your donors at the highest possible rate, and then you refresh your donor base for those that leave for one reason or the other. And I deliberately put it renew first because newly acquired donors are the most expensive donors in terms of sheer cost.
yeah,
They make entry level gifts and they're expensive to acquire. It takes a lot more effort. It takes a lot less effort to renew someone, and they're making larger gifts. And so
yeah,
the idea is you want to keep those people as much as possible. Remember, they're your customers.
yeah,
Everyone else are your beneficiaries, the people that you actually serve. Um, and that these organizations with 30 and 40% renewal, I say to them, well, what regular business could lose 60% of their customers every year and still stay afloat? Well, you
yeah,
know, although we live in a world of abundance, there's more than enough money. There's not scarcity. I know that to be a fact, but you can churn all the donors that would naturally give to you.
yeah,
If by they come and they go, they come and they go, they come and they go. So you're very wise to make that a very focus is that renewing because not only is it going to be less effort, they're going to be giving it larger and larger amounts because they mature over time. I think the rule of thumb is if someone's going to give you a gift of at least four figures, it's going to be their fourth or fifth gift, even if
yeah,
they're perfectly capable of doing that. It's not a matter of capability; it's a matter of relationship and how close and how much of an affinity they
absolutely.
speak. So now, so you're definitely regionally oriented. Northeast Ohio, that Cleveland and Cleveland metro area.
Yep, we have our men's crisis center and our administrative offices are located right close to downtown. And then our women and children's shelter is like 15 minutes west on the west side of Cleveland. So it's all in that area, primarily everybody from Cuyahoga County, which is the county. And, we have flexibility because we don't receive county funding. So we'll sometimes have people come from the edge of another county. But yeah, it's Northeast Ohio, and we're not part of we're part of Citygate Network, but we're not part of we're not like a one affiliate of a bunch of gospel missions. We are a standalone gospel mission. So yeah, it's this regional area, and we have a few unique things about us. One of them I mentioned is that we're the only homeless shelter organization that doesn't receive any government funding in the area that I'm aware of. And then we also just this past earlier this spring we opened the first transitional housing for women and children to be able to stay together that's here in Cleveland. So we opened that right next to our Women and Children's Center, and that's been a really big thing. It was our most recent capital campaign too.
Okay. So then you have day programs and residential programs, both.
Yep.
Okay. Um, this is so off the top of your head, how many people do you serve in any given week or month or year?
So in a year, last year we served over 1,100 unique individuals between the two crisis centers. And my memory for these things, I always have to check. At Laura's home, which is our women's center, we have 166 beds and 55 rooms. And then at Crossroads, we have several large rooms where it's more suitable for congregate living. And we have step up bunks in there. And so we have about 100 beds in that space. And so, like last fiscal year, we had 568 men, 304 women, 295 children that stayed with us. So, decent amount of people that we're serving throughout the year. This past fiscal year, we had gotten over 500 unique people calling the women's shelter a month. We've been on a rotating wait list for 10 years now, so the need is always growing.
Okay. So then there's still a great need that you're not meeting in the area. And you're okay.
Yeah.
Now, you said you just finished a capital campaign for a transitional unit.
Yep.
Okay. Um, uh, Tell me, or do you have like since it's a Christian ministry, do you have chapel services, other kinds of me try to meet people's spiritual needs? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have another one of the ways that our program is pretty unique. And we partner and work with most of the all of really the other organizations in our space. So it's never something where we're going out saying, the other places aren't doing it right, and we are. We just have a different way of doing it that we believe in.
Hmm.
But one of the big things that's different with us is a lot of the other uh, nonprofits work and services work off of housing first, and they typically try to get people in and out within 30 to 45 days into shelter and housing of some kind. Our program is different in that the average stay for us through the program is 9 to 12 months for somebody, and that's intentional. And so we have a really comprehensive program that people go through where they have on-site jobs that they do in the building. They have workforce training. They have chapel on every morning basis. We have mental health counseling. We have substance abuse counseling. We do some classes that everyone gets a caseworker, so their program is individualized, but we do have some things that everyone does. And so people go through a class called Touch of Reality, where it's looking at the majority of people that come to us have been through a lot of trauma. And so what has their trauma been, wrapping their head around that? And then another class that is actually one of the most popular ones with the residents is DBT, so dialectical behavioral therapy. And it's actually a psychological concept that they use a lot for people with borderline personality and anger disorders, with basically being able to manage their emotions in conflict. And we find that so many of our residents, what has unfortunately led to a loss of job or housing or a broken relationship, has been managing emotions in conflict. And so that's one of the classes people do too. So we partner with Ohio Guidestone, with Joshua Tree. We have a mix of Christian mental health counselors that are licensed that come in. We also have other organizations that we partner with. So it's a really comprehensive program. We have graduations a couple times a year, and the people that graduate, it's hard. I have a lot of respect for our residents because we're not an easy it's really committing to a life change to stay with us and go through that
Wow.
time. But we really strongly we measure a lot of outcomes in order for to determine success. When we had been talking a little earlier about longer term plans, and so we have these 3, 5, 10-year plans for the percent of our residents that break free of poverty, and there's a number of tough outcomes to reach to for us to consider them breaking free of poverty. And so it's a unique, uh, definitely more comprehensive program, but we believe that, we don't want people to come back to us unless it's to work here. And so we don't want to
Yeah.
just be a revolving door. We want to set people up for the future.
But this is fascinating. This is not a soup kitchen. People don't show up just for a free meal and leave. Um,
No.
well, do you ever turn anyone down?
So one of the things we're very clear on is there's no filters to who we take in. We take anybody and everybody, no matter their background, beliefs, anything like that. The only times where we may not be able to serve somebody is if they have a higher level of care need than we can provide. So if
Okay.
somebody has, say, like a severe paranoid schizophrenia or something where they can't operate in the type of program and living
Hmm.
that we have partners that will refer them to. Also, if somebody needs a really intense substance detox, we'll have them do that first before they come to us. So we have intake coordinators that will triage the calls that come in, and then we'll even Uber people to another partner. So that way we're not just turning them away, we're helping them get to the next place. So that's typically the only times we won't accept somebody. The other exception being just when we're full at Laura's home, we're pretty much always full, but we have people just call every day and we keep a running wait list on priority and then we move people in that way.
Okay. Well, this is
And then we also, I'll just add too, we
go
also
ahead, please.
during intense times of with the wonderful Cleveland weather, if it's extremely hot or extremely cold, we do open overflow shelter temporarily. So even for people who can't get into our program for the whole thing, we'll still open up some rooms and set up areas where we can at least get them out of the elements temporarily. So we do that as well during times of intense weather.
Okay. Well, for sure, you've got some intense weather. I know all about that. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially on the eastern side of the city,
Oh yeah.
it gets hammered with that little thing called lake effect snow.
Yep.
Um, I tell people that have never experienced it, I said, well, think of it this way: a summer thunderstorm only gets snow, and then you get an idea
Yep.
of what you're looking
Yep.
at. You know, very
Yep.
spotty, very is isolated, but very intense when it happens.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and and you don't even it doesn't even have to be that cold actually. Um,
No. Yeah.
in fact, I lived in the Buffalo area for a few years, and everyone there
So you
always
get it.
wanted it to get really cold and freeze the lake over, because that would stop the moisture transfer from the Arctic fronts that came from Canada, and it would kind of shut off that machine. Otherwise, it's yeah, um,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm impressed, Joe. I'm impressed with
Oh,
the work you do. So
I love it.
this isn't typical to what I usually think of as a gospel ministry or whatever. Well, it's not a rescue mission in the classic sense. Um,
Yeah.
it is and it isn't. You're looking at long-term success. You're looking at low recidivism. You want to give people that leg up. Are you pretty much divided between male and female, or does it skew one or the other way?
It's pretty even. I mean, yeah, it's between when you combine, because we have some women, usually about a quarter of the women with us are single women with no children, and then the other three quarters have children. And so when you combine women and children, it ends up being another 20 or 30 than the men. So it is pretty split across the board in terms of numbers. The women and children, typically part of the reason we're full more here is because it's so much harder for the moms with kids to move and figure out
Oh
housing.
yeah.
And the men that come to us, it's a little more transient at the men's shelter because it's typically a little easier for them to more quickly get kind of back into a situation because it's just them they're figuring out. And so, but that's one of the reasons that the transitional housing is really nice is because we actually, um, with what we were able to raise for the construction and then for operating, the way our program works is we have 16 units in townhouses. It's right next door to the women and children's shelter. And so the families that are approved to move in, it's each unit is 3 bedrooms. They can still come to some of our case management and programming that takes place here. So they still have the support system. And then they don't pay any rent. And instead, they have a mandatory savings of about 20% of their income. So that way they can stay
Oh,
there up to about 2 years. And over the course of that time, by the time they get to the end, they've gotten the habit of saving what will be rent, and they have the savings set to the side, and they've had more independent living because, you know, if uh, I think the way our facilities look is also looks very different than people think a homeless shelter is, but it's still a big drastic change to go from all this living with so many other people with room checks and controls to independent living. So the transitional housing is kind of a gradual step, so that way it's not just all this accountability to nothing
none.
and having to adjust. So
Well, I'm really fascinated. We'll have to learn more. Is
to
there
come
anything
out for
you?
a visit one of these
Well, I
days.
just might. You never know. I'm
Yeah.
serious. Is there anything you haven't shared that you would like to share?
I think just, I think one of the reasons I was drawn to this job, and one of the speakers that was at the conference that we were at spoke about this at the very beginning, is, one of the things I'm very passionate about is I think we, especially with the polarization of politics and everybody's tribes and everything, I think it's so common for people to either fall in this, especially for Christians. Again, we have of our supporters, people that are, you know, probably as many that are non-believers as believers, but speaking to Christians specifically, and as one myself, we have people who tend to lean towards this very like just throw the Bible at it, just get saved, write your ticket to heaven. What's happening on earth
Oh
doesn't
yes,
matter. Maybe they lean into the super hyper one side of politics. And then you have the other secular side that I think oftentimes cares a lot more to the different areas of social justice. But as a believer, they don't believe in what we believe in terms of the gospel and sin and
right.
our separation from God. And so I think the thing that I love about our organization, and I think any organization that does this, is being able to meld those two where you go. I mean, part of what I just continue to learn on a daily basis is if you're hitching your wagon to Jesus, it's going to pull you through groups and boxes you're going to be all over the place. You're never going to fit in if you try to just identify with one political party
I
or
like
one
that.
group of people. And
If you
so I
hitch your
just,
wagon to Jesus, it's going to pull you through all these different groups. I love that.
yeah,
I love that. Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. And I
I
think
will
it,
remember
it's, it
that.
creates,
I
good.
do.
I'm glad. Yeah, and I think it makes it tough. It's an uncomfortable tension to live in. I tell people all the time, it's like probably too liberal for my conservative friends and too conservative for my liberal friends, and I'm
Kind of
too,
puts you in an awkward
and
position. Yeah. Mhm.
but I think that's the tension that I think Jesus calls us to live in, and I think we just have to pursue what is the right thing to do and what He's calling us to do, and it's tough, but so I would say that's the other thing that just I love about the organization's approach that I have is that we are so, and I think it's one of the reasons we connect so well with non-Christian groups outside of us is that I mean, we've got a cross in our logo. We are adamant about our beliefs. We have in our
Mm.
mission statement, our core values, God's all through it, and Christ is all through it. But we connect with people who have polar opposite beliefs than us, but still support the work we do. And I think it's because we're trying our best imperfectly to do what Jesus would do, is to rub shoulders and sit with people, to love people, and to also differentiate between, you know, obviously our goal. And one of the things that is a big focus for us is that we're sharing the gospel when people are accepting Christ. But we also firmly believe that even if somebody never accepts Christ, that is our duty as Christians to love and serve them and take care of them while they're here on this earth. And so
Okay.
I think doing both of those things is just it's what I love about my job. So I think that's just always something I love to share if it's encouraging to other people too, who feel like they're always like, why do I never fit in one of these groups, you know?
Well, Jesus made that very clear that we would not fit for any number of
Yeah.
reasons. Thank you, Joe, for sharing today. I really appreciate it very, very much. Um,
Yeah, thank
Ladies and
you.
gentlemen, been talking to I've been talking to Joe Shaliro, who is the donor relations officer for the city mission, and I have a feeling I'll be talking to him again. But thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. This is great.